Hello, welcome to the continuation of our story reading from the book Collected Short Stories by Ruskin. We have been reading the story being told by a crow, which is one of the family of crows living on the trees in the compound of the bungalow. So this crow has been giving a big concert on a weekend when all the family was relaxing on the lawn with their drinks, I would say. So it sang and sang and sang. I gave it everything I had, says the crow, and the humans, all of them on the lawn to enjoy the evening breeze, listened to me in silence, struck with wonder at my performance. When I had finished, I bowed and preened myself, waiting for the applause. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Then the junior sahib stooped, picked up a bottle opener and flung it at me. Well, I ask you, what can one say about humans? I do my best to defend them from all kinds of criticism. And this is what I get for my pains. Anyway, I picked up the bottle opener and added it to my collection of odds and ends. It was getting dark and soon everyone was stumbling around looking for another bottle opener. Junior Sahib's popularity was even lower than mine. One day, Junior Sahib came home carrying a heavy shotgun. He pointed it at me a few times and I dived for cover. But he didn't fire. Probably I was out of range. He's only threatening you, said Slow, from the safety of the jamun tree, where he sat in the shadows. He probably doesn't know how to fire the thing. But I wasn't taking any chances. I had seen a sly look on Junior Saab's face, and I decided that he was trying to make me careless. So I stayed well out of range. Then one evening I received a visit from my cousin, Charm. He had come to me for a loan. He wanted some new bottle tops for his collection and had brought me a moldy old toothbrush to offer in exchange. Charm landed on the garden wall, toothbrush in his beak, and was waiting for me to join him there. When there was a flash and a tremendous bang, Charm was sent several feet into the air and landed limp and dead in a flower bed. I got him, shouted Junior Sahib. I've shot that blasted crow. Throwing away the gun, Junior Sahib ran out into the garden. Overcome with joy, he picked up my fallen relative and began running around the bungalow with his trophy. The rest of the family had collected on the veranda. Drop that thing at once, called the Mem Sahib. Uncle is doing a war dance, observed the boy. It's unlucky to shoot a crow, said the colonel. I thought it was time to take a hand in the proceedings and let everyone know that the right crow, the one and only Speedy, was alive and kicking. So I swooped down the jackfruit tree, dived through Junior Sahib's window, and emerged with one of his socks. Triumphantly flaunting his dead crow, Junior Sahib came dancing up the garden path, then stopped dead when he saw me perched on the windowsill, a sock in my beak. His jaw fell, his eyes bulged. He looked like the owl in the banyan tree. You shot the wrong crow, shouted the colonel, and everyone roared with laughter. Before Junior Sahib could recover from the shock, I took off in a leisurely fashion and joined Slow on the wall. Junior Sahib came rushing out with the gun, but by now it was too dark to see anything. And I heard the Mem Sahib telling the colonel You had better take that gun away before he does himself a mischief. So the colonel took Junior indoors and gave him a brandy. I composed a new song for Junior Sahib's benefit and sang it to him outside his window. I understand you want a crow to poison, shoot, or smother my fond alarms, but by your leave, I'll substitute another. Allow me then to introduce my most respected brother. Like that I sang. Although I was quite understanding about the whole tragic mix-up, I was, after all, the family's very own house crow. My fellow crows were outraged at what had happened to Charm and swore vengeance on Junior Sahib. They shouted at him with great spirit, forgetting what they were shouting. In times of war, we forget how much we owe to our enemies. Junior Sahib had only to step onto the garden and several crows would swoop down on him, screeching and swearing and aiming lusty blows on his head and hands. He took to coming out wearing a sola topi, and even then they knocked it off and drove him indoors. Once he tried lighting a cigarette on the veranda steps, when Slow swooped low across the porch and snatched it from his lips. Junior Sahib shut himself up in his room and smoked countless cigarettes, a sure sign that his nerves were going to pieces. Every now and then the Mem Sahib would come out and shoo us off, and because he wasn't an enemy, we obliged by retreating to the garden wall. After all, Slow and I depended on her for much of her board, if not for her lodging. But Junior Sahib had only to show his face outside the house, and all the crows in the area would be after him like avenging furies. "It doesn't look as though they are going to forgive you," said the Mem Sahib. "Elephants never forget, and crows never forgive," said the colonel. "Would you like to borrow my catapult, uncle?" asked the boy. "Just for self-protection, you know." "Shut up," said the Junior Sahib, and went to bed. One day he sneaked out of the back door and dashed across to the garage. A little later, the family's old car, seldom used, came out of the garage with Junior Sahib at the wheel. He had decided that if he couldn't take a walk in safety, he would go for a drive. All the windows were up. No sooner had the car turned into the driveway than about a dozen crows dived down on it, crowding the bonnet and flapping in front of the windscreen. Junior Sahib couldn't see a thing. He swung the steering wheel left and right and center, and the car went off the driveway, ripped through a hedge, and crushed a bed of sweet peas, and came to a stop against the trunk of a mango tree. Junior Sahib just sat there, afraid to open the door. The family had to come out of the house and rescue him. "Are you all right?" asked the colonel. "I have bruised my knees," Junior Sahib said. "Never mind your knees," said the Mem Sahib, gazing around at the ruin of her garden. "What about my sweet peas?" "I think your uncle is going to have a nervous breakdown," I heard the colonel saying. "What's that?" asked the boy. "Is it the same as a car having a breakdown?" "Well, not exactly, but you could call it a mind breaking up." Junior Sahib had been refusing to leave his room or take his meals. The family was worried about him. I was worried too. Because, believe it or not, we crows are among the very few who sincerely desire the preservation of the human species. "He needs a change," said the Mem Sahib. "A rest cured," said the colonel sarcastically. "A rest from doing nothing." Send him to Switzerland, suggested the boy. We can't afford that, but we can take him to a hill station. The nearest hill station was some 50 miles as the human drives, only 10 as the crow flies. Many people went up during the summer months. It wasn't fancied much by crows. For one thing, it was a tidy sort of place, and people lived in houses that were set fairly far apart. Opportunities for scavenging were limited. Also, it was rather cold, and the trees were inconvenient and uncomfortable. A friend of mine who had spent a night in a pine tree said he hadn't been able to sleep because of prickly pine needles and the wind howling through the branches. Let's all go up for a holiday, said the Memsahib. We can spend a week in a boarding house. All of us need a change. A few days later, the house was locked up and the family piled into the old car and drove off into the hills. I had the grounds to myself. The dog had gone too, and the gardener spent all day dozing in his hammock. There was no one around to trouble me. Yes, but what good is that? With everyone gone, there are no throwaways, giveaways, and takeaways. We'll have to try the house next door, said Slow, and be driven off by the other crows. That's not our territory, you know. We can go across to help them or ask for their help, but we are not supposed to take their pickings. It's justice in cricket, old boy. We could have tried the bazaar or the railway station, where there is always a sort of rubbish to be found. But there is also a lot of competition in those places. The station crows are gangsters. The bazaar crows are bullies. Slow and I had grown soft. We'd have been no match for the bad boys. I just realized how much we depend on humans, I said. We could go back to living in the jungle, said Slow. No, that would be too much like hard work. We would be living on wild fruit most of the time. Besides, the jungle crows don't have anything to do with us now. Ever since we took up with humans, we became the outcasts of the bird world. That means we are almost human, said Slow. You might say we have all their vices and none of their virtues, I said. Just a different set of values, old boy. I like eating hen's eggs instead of crow's eggs. That's something in their favor. And while you are hanging around here waiting for the mangoes to fall, I am off to locate our humans, said Slow. Slow's beak well open. He looked like, well, a hungry crow. Don't tell me you are going to follow them up to the hill station. You don't even know where they are staying. I'll soon find out, I said, and took off for the hills. You'd be surprised at how simple it is to be a good detective. If only you put your mind to it. Of course, if Ellery Queen had been able to fly, he wouldn't have required 15 chapters and his father's assistance to crack a case. Swooping low over the hill station, I thought Ellery Queen was a female. So it says Ellery Queen, if he had been, he would be.
No.
So it seems it's a male. Swooping low over the hill station, it wasn't long before I spotted my human's old car. It was parked outside a boarding house called Climber's Rest. I hadn't seen anyone climbing, but dozing in an armchair in the garden was my favorite human. I perched on top of a colorful umbrella and waited for Junior Side to wake up. I decided it would be rather inconsiderate of me to disturb his sleep. So I waited patiently on the brolly, looking at him with one eye and keeping one eye on the house. He stirred uneasily as though he had suddenly had a bad dream. Then he opened his eyes. I must have been the first thing he saw. Good morning, I called, in a friendly tone, always ready to forgive and forget. That's Speedy. He leapt out of the armchair and ran into the house, hollering at the top of his voice. I supposed he hadn't been able to contain his delight at seeing me again. Humans can be funny that way. They'll hate you one day and they'll love you the next. Well, Junior Sahib ran all over the boarding house, screaming, "It is that crow, it is that crow. He is following me everywhere." Various people, including the family, ran outside to see what the commotion was about. And I thought it would be better to make myself scarce. So I flew to the top of a spruce tree and stayed very still and very quiet. "Crow, what crow?" said the colonel. "Our crow," said Junior Sahib, "the one that persecutes me. I was dreaming of it just now, and when I opened my eyes, there it was on the garden umbrella." "There's nothing there now," said the Mem Sahib. "You probably hadn't woken up completely." "He's having illusions again," said the boy. "Delusions," corrected the colonel. "No, look here," said the Mem Sahib. "You'll have to pull yourself together. You will take leave of your senses if you don't. I tell you, it is there. It is here," sobbed Junior Sahib. "It's following me everywhere." "It's grown fond of Uncle," said the boy. "And it seems Uncle can't live without crows." Junior Sahib looked up with a wild glint in his eye. "That's it," he cried. "I can't live without them. That's the answer. That's the answer to my problem. I don't hate crows, I love them." Everyone just stood around goggling at Junior Sahib. "I'm feeling fine now," he carried on. "What difference does it make if you can just do the opposite of what you have been doing before? I thought I hated crows, but all the time I really loved them." And flapping his arms and trying to caw like a crow, he went prancing about the garden. "Now he thinks he is a crow," said the boy. "Is he still having delusions?" "That's right," said the Mem Sahib, "delusions of grandeur." After that, the family decided that there was no point in staying on in the hill station any longer. Junior Sahib had completed his rest cure. And even if he was only one who believed himself cured, and that was all right, because after all, he was the only one who mattered. If you are feeling fine, can there be anything wrong with you? No sooner was everyone back in the bungalow than Junior Sahib took to hopping barefoot on the grass early every morning, all the time scattering food about for the crows. Bread, chapatis, cooked rice, curried eggplants, the Mem Sahib's homemade toffee, you name it, we got it. Slow and I were the first to help ourselves to these dawn offerings, and soon the other crows had joined us on the lawn. We didn't mind. Junior Sahib brought enough for everyone. "We ought to honor him in some way," said Slow. "Yes, why not?" I said. "There was someone else hundreds of years ago who fed the birds. They followed him wherever he went." "That's right. They made him a saint. But as far as I know, he didn't feed any crows. At least you don't see any crows in the pictures, just sparrows and robins and wagtails. Small fry, our human is dedicated exclusively to crows. Do you realize that, Slow?" "Sure, we ought to make him the patron saint of crows. What do you say, fellows?" "Caw, caw," everybody echoed in agreement. "Saint Corvus," said Slow, as Junior Sahib emerged from the house laden with good things to eat. Chorus, 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 we all cried in chorus. And what a pretty picture he made, a crow eating from his hand, another perched on his shoulder, and about a dozen of us on the grass forming a respectful ring around him. From persecutor to protector, from beastliness to saintliness, and sometimes it can be the other way around. You never know with humans. So that's the end of that thing. It was an interesting turn of the crow's story. I finished. Thank you. Bye.